getting so close to wrapping up this year's Beetlejuice project. I just have this video, one more after that, and then it will be done. This video will be focused on making Juno herself.
Will you guys shut up and leave me alone? I've got all this paperwork to do.
And filling up her work desk, which will be quite an undertaking. I actually already started working on her desk items in a recent live stream. In case you missed it, I'm going to edit down the highlights and put them in the video now. I started out the live stream with a printout of everything I wanted to include on Juno's desk, including this really brightly lit red lamp, a frog, some books, and then I also included a list of different items such as files, forms, cigarettes, some cigarette boxes, and a few other things that I will get to. But in the live stream, I wanted to focus on the lamp and the frog statue. This was also going to be the first time that I was using cosplay. I am very excited to use it. I have seen a few different channels use cosplay and they've always just enjoyed it, so I am ready to give it a try. To begin the frog statue, I started by using a Christmas ornament hook wire, and I formed it into an armature that will make up the legs of the frog. Before cutting off the really large loop at the top, I covered the connection with clay so that it wouldn't come undone. The area with clay is the main torso of the frog, so I started adding some more clay to make the head, because I guess with a frog, like a torso and the head are kind of the same thing. I added 2 small balls of clay to make for the large bulbous eyes and blended those in. For the arms, I created 2 very small carrot shapes and added those to the sides. I didn't quite know what to do with his arms, so in the end I decided to fold them across the front. I think it just gives it a very innocent look to the statue. To finish off the very few details that I'm adding to the head, I'm using my craft knife to cut a slit for the mouth. Once that was done, I wanted to freeze my work. So off camera, I used a heat gun to harden the clay. After that, I could move on to the legs without worrying that I was going to smash his head. I added the legs over the wire. This was very difficult because these are very small snakes of clay, but I was able to get something that looked half decent. You still can kind of see the wire sticking out, but I do work with it a little bit later to try and cover up the wire completely. I then noticed that both of my frog statue references had a little belly, so I couldn't resist adding in a belly to my frog. This was just a little ball of clay that I smoothed into the rest of his body. I worked a bit more on the legs, and in the end I do think it ended up looking like he's wearing a pair of jeans. But who knows, maybe it is a frog statue wearing jeans in the movie. It's really hard to see the detail. I added another ball of clay onto my work surface, and then I pushed the legs into the clay to give a base for my statue. To add the frog feet, I made a flat football shape and then cut it in half. This I'm just going to put on top of the base around where the feet area is, and then I added some indentions to add some detail. I put the frog statue into the oven, and then I started to work on the lamp. From my reference, it was a bit difficult to see the details of the lamp itself, and I had no idea what to look up to see what it might look like when the lamp is off. But I was just going with my best guess at the time. I rolled up a tube of paper and I started to look for something that would be the base of the lamp. We cannot see what the bottom of the lamp looks like in the movie reference, so I'm just looking for something that's flat that will be easy to sit on my desk and I know the lamp won't topple over. I found these plastic snowflakes and thought this would be perfect. Then I could move on to the lamp shade. I just used a circle template to figure out what might be a good size for a shade, and then started to manipulate it on top of the lamp body. I got my reference to double check, and I do think I got pretty close with the shape of the lamp. In the comments of the live stream, I had some suggestions to use some different colored paper. I had some brown construction paper, which I felt gave that reddish glow that we were getting in the movie. Now, construction paper is really weak, so I am going to have to do a few things to make sure that it doesn't rip while I'm working on it. I'm using Mod Podge and stippling the Mod Podge onto the surface of the construction paper. This is not only going to strengthen the paper, but it's going to give it more of a leather type look. because in the live stream we did all decide this is some kind of buckskin type leatherish type lamp. Or rawhide. Maybe rawhide is the term that we used. I used red watercolor paints to paint the base of the lamp, and I'm not sure that was the way to go, and I do end up changing that later. Here you can see the texture that was created by stippling the Mod Podge, and I really liked how that came out. I am going to use that more in the future, but this was the end of the live stream where my lamp completely fell apart. That is okay, because I do end up going a different direction with the base of the lamp. But my frog came out wonderful when he was done in the oven, and we are now ready to move on and finish these two pieces for Juno's desk. After the live stream, I had several ideas for the lamp sent to me, and a lot of people agreed that they felt like the lamp shade and the lamp body should be the same material. So I remade the red piece so that it would be the same cone, but it's made from the construction paper that I stippled with Mod Podge like I did in the live stream. So I'm going to replace this piece, but follow the same exact steps where I'm adding this onto the snowflake base. The base is going to be covered up with paper, so it really doesn't matter too much what it looks like. I'm not going to be adding a bunch of wet watercolor paint to it this time, so it will not fall off the base. I figured out what size I wanted the shade to be and then clamped it while the glue dried. The shade was looking a little bit too big for me once I put it onto the lamp, so I cut it down. In the reference shots of this lamp, you can tell that the edges are sewn. It has some kind of lacing around it, so I'm going to try and recreate that by punching little needle holes through the edge. And then I added some glue to the end of a single strand of embroidery thread. This is going to strengthen the end, so I don't need a needle. I can just push it through the hole, and it's much more thin and easier to use for this project. I'm going to go around the entire lamp shade. It doesn't come out looking like the exact sewn pattern that you see in the movie reference, but I do like the detail it adds to the edge of this piece, which would otherwise just be a plain brown lampshade. It feels like such an out-of-place lamp for the style of it to be in an industrial workplace, but maybe that's what makes it perfect. It's pretty wacky design down there in the netherworld. So now we can move on to attaching the pieces together. I added a lot more wood glue between the lamp body and the lamp base. This is going to permanently attach it, make it a lot stronger over the years. Now I can add glue to the very top of the lamp body, and I'm going to carefully center the lamp shade onto the lamp body. This is a very easy lamp construction. I don't know if this is how it's actually supposed to go, but this is the way I am putting it together, and I think it looks pretty close to the movie reference. I'm painting the snowflake with some brown acrylic paint. As I said, you won't see it very much, but if you do see it, I want it to blend in and not look like a bright gold snowflake sitting on the top of a desk. Then, of course, I needed to age the lamp. I'm adding some more of that same brown, and I'm just going to pull it down with my finger. I'm adding a glob at the top and pulling it down as if there's been some age and grime over the years that's built up on the lamp. I think it kind of came out like something that belongs in a horror movie or a true crime story, but I like it in the end. And while I had the brown paint out, I was going to go ahead and paint the frog. I'm going to do a base coat of brown because I want to make it a metallic colored statue, and a metallic paint is typically pretty transparent, so it's best to put some kind of color underneath it. I'm adding a gold on top. Hopefully this will make it look like a brass statue, and then I'm adding some antique copper here and there to make it look like the statue has been worn or been affected by hand oils over time. Now that both of those are finished up, we can add these items to Juno's desk. I created Juno's desk in a previous video. You can find it in the Beetlejuice playlist. I also created the books, and in the video where I created them, there is a free download for you, so be sure to check it out. This is one of my favorite parts of making miniatures, when I get to put everything together. These were two big pieces that stood out to me in the movie, but of course we need to add more. My friend from Tiny Keyhole Minis sent me this ashtray for Juno a long time ago, and it is finally time to put it to work. I love the added femininity of this piece to Juno's desk, which is in such an industrial, harsh room. And the added gold detail on the edges of the pink heart ashtray reflect the gold color in the frog statue, so I think it's perfect. I also need to grab quite a few books for Juno's desk. She's very busy. She needs access to a lot of information. These are some mass-made books that I have in my collection. They are all going to be glued together into one book pile on her desk in between two bookends. So I didn't want anything that was too special to me to be glued there forever. I'm gluing them just with their book fronts and backs together first and putting them in between 1, 2, 3 blocks. Once I did remove them from the 1, 2, 3 blocks, I realized I had kind of an accordion effect going on where they just wanted to pop back open. So to counteract that, I mixed a little bit of tacky glue with some water. I didn't want to make it so watery that it just, water damaged the books, but just enough so that it was a thin coat of glue. Then I put them in between the 1, 2, 3 blocks again to let them dry. I'm going to be using 2 square beads and I'm painting them gold to become my bookends. Now it still had this open hole, so I decided to add these nail art pieces that are flat on one side. I feel like they kind of make them look like little canisters, which might be hiding some kind of goodie on either side of the bookends. To attach it all together, I cut a piece of cardstock that is the same width as my bookend pieces, and I'm going to add glue to the bottom of my books. I did notice that they weren't all perfectly glued, but they were glued enough that they weren't popping open that would cause a problem down the road. I added glue to the bottom of all the books and then added my sheet of paper that's going perfectly underneath all of them. I tried to picture where my bookends were going to go centered on either outside book, and that let me know where I wanted the strip of paper to come out the side. Once those were in place, I could take my bookends and glue them both up against the book and on top of the piece of paper. This is going to make this entire book stack really secure, and as if it's just one miniature, none of this is going to come apart. After I added my second gold bookend, I was able to cut off any excess paper that stuck out past both pieces. This means that I had a finished looking stack of books, and I had the bindings on one side and then the loose pages on the other side. I'm still not sure if I glued them the correct way on my desk, but you'll have to let me know in the end. Maybe I should have kind of varied them and had them facing different directions. Of course, I had to age them like everything else, and I added a bit of aging to that strip of paper underneath. Just in case you saw it at all, it wasn't a bright white strip of paper. Then I let it all dry, and it was ready to be put onto Juno's desk. I really like how this came out, and I kind of want to make more of these little book stacks. I think they're really fun and could fill up a lot of spaces in a dollhouse. At this point, I was getting really excited to put everything together, so I was grabbing all of the individual pieces I already have made, but then I realized I can't glue anything down yet because ultimately I want this lamp to light up. And the way I'm going to be able to do that is if I have an LED that comes up underneath the desk and into the lamp. So I am first going to have to cut a hole into Juno's desk, which did kind of hurt me a little bit because I really enjoyed putting this desk together. Because the base of the lamp is rather uneven, I'm using some gallery glass leading, which I'm hoping will take away any light leakage that might happen from the LED coming up through the desk. I pushed the lamp into that, and I'm hoping it will fill in all the crevices. I also added a little bit more tacky glue around the edges because gallery glass isn't really a glue, and I want to make sure my lamp stays in place. So now that that's done, I can glue everything down. I'm starting with the largest or the most important pieces and getting those in place first. I'm putting the ashtray at this far corner because that's going to be closest to the viewer when the desk is in place. I added in my books, my lamp, and my frog, and then I could start adding papers here and there. I tried to mix them with file folders, and then I added some other books, specifically the handbook for the recently deceased, of course, and I just played around with how they looked. I bent the edges down here and there to make it look like the papers had a bit more gravity to them, and then of course I had to turn it around and add some more paperwork from the back. After all, it's the back of her desk that we do see in the movie. I had a lot more forms that I had previously printed out when I worked on Flat Stanley's space. This helped me to cover up the base of the lamp, and I was able to fit a few more around the book area, and I bent all the papers down over the desk, so it did look like a mess of papers that were occasionally falling off the desk onto the floor. I probably will have to add a few onto the floor. I put this clip in because I thought it was hilarious that I could not get this drawer open, because this is supposed to be like one of those industrial metal drawer desks, and I feel like they always do that. But I did get it open, and I was able to get one more file folder down there, and of course a Beetlejuice flyer, because they are all over poor Juno's office. Here's how the desk is looking. I am very happy with the messiness. I do like that you can still see the desktop. Now, no workspace is complete without a trash can, so you can file away memos that you want to ignore. So I'm going to be using 2 3D prints that just came off of my 3D printer. I wasn't going to use them for kits, and they're just like little canisters. So for this, I'm gluing 2 together because I want a taller trash can. I was thinking about doing a mesh trash can, but then I couldn't find a mesh that I really liked, and I didn't quite know how to make my own. So I decided to go with a metal industrial looking trash can. I covered them with paper around the connection between the 2 pieces, and then I added more paper around the top and bottom to give a bit of a lip to the trash can. And then I covered everything in Mod Podge to connect it together and give it all one texture. I'm going to paint it with a base coat of black and then cover everything with silver, which did take several coats. Once that was done, I could age it with some watered down black paint. I do want it to look like this is a very old trash can that's had a lot of trash go through it. I always enjoy aging anything that's supposed to look old and industrial, and I enjoy adding like rust with a bit of brown paint. It's one of my joys in miniature making. After that was done, it was time to fill it with trash. So I am first going to fill the open cavity with a bit of paper towel. This takes up most of the space, and I really only have to worry about what is on top. I am happy to report that I was able to find the new flyer from the new Beetlejuice movie. I had the flyer from the old one in previous parts of the project, but I was able to find this one, and I am going to use it around the trash can and maybe in the future add it in some other places around the project. I'm using hot glue for this because it does take hold rather quickly. If I was using tacky glue and waiting for everything to dry, this would take quite a while because all of the papers would stay spongy, and I wouldn't quite know how everything was going to lay until the glue dried. So I prefer hot glue for this, and if for any reason you can still see hot glue after adding the trash, you just add another piece of trash on top. So it's a quicker way to work, and I like the results. I added some pieces that were more neatly folded, hanging out of the top and around the bottom of the trash can. I love the overflowing look. I think it goes back to the bulletin board I made that was overflowing with the flyers, and just really rounds out the idea that Juno's in a constant battle with these Beetlejuice flyers that keep showing up everywhere. I put one of the new flyers at the bottom, which is mostly flat so that you can read it, and that is going to finish up my trash can build for the desk. I have now made every single thing on my wish list here except for the cigarette boxes, which I did originally print in this piece of paper. So these are the same ones that I made for the cigarette smoking man that is in the waiting room. I am going to cut them up, fold them. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because it's pretty easy to figure out how to fold these up. They're just going to be empty, and I am going to scrunch them up and put them around Juno's office. They're very easy to make. It's thin paper, so they're easy to scrunch up and just glue wherever you want them. I'm adding them into the trash can. I think I end up putting, 3 in here, and then I'm going to put 1 on the desk. And I don't really know if this is Juno's brand. I don't know if anyone can tell that from the movie, but this is the box that I already had, and who says the smoking man from the waiting room couldn't come in and share a few with Juno? So maybe they're pals, or maybe they like to take their smoke breaks together. I added 1 on her desk near the ashtray, and everything is complete for this build. I can now add it into Juno's office, which is almost done. I can hardly believe it. There's been so many details and so much time that's gone into this space, and I'm so happy to see it is coming together. I really love how everything is looking. The desk is full, the trash can is full, the room is nearly at capacity, yet this chair remains empty. Let's change that and fill it with Juno herself.
Will you get out of here? Go on, get downstairs.
Just like I did with Juno's desk, I created a piece of paper that had all the information I needed on it to create Juno. She has a very distinct outfit that she wears every time we see her. Of course, she's dead. That seems to be what happens in this movie. You wear the same thing all the time. So I got her outfit from several different angles, and I printed out the size that I think she needs to be. She's rather petite. Here she is compared to Beetlejuice. As you can see in the references, she is much shorter and smaller than Adam and Barbara. So I want to make sure that I get across her petite figure. I have had the parts to make Juno since I created all the people in the waiting room, so that has been a while. She has been patiently waiting. I'm going to lay her on top of the figure that I printed out just to make sure I get the right size for her. I am so thankful her body came with pre-sculpted shoes. This means her shoes are going to be some of the easiest I have created in quite a while. I'm going to be using some glossy black paint to go over them, and then that is about it. I figured that would be easier to do before they were attached to her body. I used pipe cleaners and some strips of t-shirt just like I have done before, and connected her body together. I am planning for Juno to always be in her office, so I am putting her into the sitting position before I create her clothes. When I'm making static dolls like this, it is much easier to do it this way, and I always feel like they come out more natural looking when I just go ahead and decide how they're going to be. Are they going to be sitting or standing? Now, when it came to her face, I struggled quite a bit. I wanted to show the wrinkles in her face to show her age. However, the wrinkles aren't sculpted into her face. So I always have a hard time with wrinkles on faces. So I kind of went over that back and forth. I didn't struggle with creating her neck wound that we see in the movie, but I did want to add that in. And then I just decided to move forward with other details of her face, like her eyes, her red lips, and she does have quite a bit of blush on her cheeks. I at some point just decided to turn the camera off and play around with the wrinkles, and I did come up with something that I liked. I cannot tell you how I did it. I don't even think I would have, even if I caught it on camera. I did like dark circles around her eyes and then maybe added some watered down paint in the little areas right between her cheeks and her mouth. But in the end, I think I like it. I think I like how it came out. Of course, I have to paint her fingernails. I don't really know if they are red in the movie, but I wanted them to match her red lipstick, so, you know. And it's just fun to paint fingernails and toenails on these little dolls. When it came to her clothing, I thought I'd start with one of the most difficult parts, which is going to be this frilled shirt. I'm pretty sure this shirt was chosen specifically to highlight her neck wound, so I want to make sure and add it to highlight the one on my doll. I didn't think I would be able to get this effect very well with fabric. Fabric doesn't like to behave in miniature. even with larger pieces of clothing. So I decided to do this in tissue paper. I felt like it would give much more of a detailed look to it, and I'd really be able to get in that accordion fold that you see in the shirt. I glued it down with some Fabrifix, which is a clear glue, because I wasn't sure what you'd be able to see through this because it is such a thin material. Once I was happy with the placement, I could cut off any of the excess material. I then cut a very small strip from the accordion fold that I did previously, added glue along the collar, and added that piece with a lot of patience and holding of my breath. So I just pushed it down with a toothpick, and I have no idea why I was using a broken toothpick to do this, and the end of the toothpick does disappear at some point during this process, and I think it might still be in her shirt. I don't know where it went. I'm just watching this video back going, what just happened? Anyway, I suggest using a toothpick that's not broken to do this, but I did end up liking how her collar was looking, and I do think it had the same effect that the costume designers for the movie were going for, where it really does highlight her wound. Now that she looks like she's ready to go to the dentist, I decided we could move on to her skirt and jacket. I found this material in my collection. I think this was maybe sent to me by my friend She. Thank you, She. This ended up being the perfect material. I mean, it just really looks like business suit material. And then I'm going to be using this black material for the pockets. So the gray material is shiny on one side and not shiny on the other side. I'm going to be using the non-shiny side. It just looks like a really luxurious gray material. The only issue is that it's very thick. So I am going to have to do a few things to overcome the thickness of the material to get it to work for my doll. Thankfully, the skirt doesn't have a lot of detail. It's pretty much just a pencil skirt. So I hemmed the bottom. I found out how wide the skirt needed to be. Then I attached the sides, flipped it inside out, and I had a very simple pencil skirt. This is going to be added onto Juno, but before it was permanently added, I made sure how long it needed to be and then cut off any excess. Now I can attach it to her body. I liked how the bottom of the skirt looked, but I needed it to be a little bit more form-fitting towards the top. So I'm going to be doing a gathering stitch all around the top of the skirt, and then when I add it back onto her body, I can simply pull on the string and then tie it together so that it brings the skirt together at her waist, and this will help keep down the bulk that I'm going to be fighting with this fabric through the entire process. I added a bit more hot glue to the knot, and then I started adding some hot glue in the areas where I needed her skirt to be flattened out. If you remember from the beginning, she's going to be sitting, and because this fabric can kind of hold its own and it doesn't fall like regular fabric would in real life scale, I have to force the weight. So I'm adding glue to the top of her legs and then pushing the skirt down. Thankfully, because this is a thick fabric, I don't have to worry about any of the glue coming through the fabric, like you won't be able to see it, and it's helping me form it to her body. So there are pluses and minuses to using a thick fabric for something like this. I'm now going to go pretty quickly through making her jacket. If you want to see a really detailed tutorial on making a jacket, you can watch the process of me making almost any of the Addams Family men dolls on my Addams Family playlist, or you can watch when I made Beetlejuice's outfit. His jacket is actually removable, which is the only one of those I have ever made. But I'm doing pretty much the same process here for Juno. I added the sleeves first, and because this is not going to be a removable jacket, I can just glue it all straight down. Now, I did add the pockets to these pieces as I'm showing you here. They are a little bit big, and I do add these front pieces of the jacket onto Juno's doll. You won't see it for very long because I do end up pulling it all back off. But the problems with it, which are kind of hard to see, I wish I had taken more time to show you what the issue was, but the fabric was fraying really bad at the edges, and because of the way that I glued it down, it was looking just a little bit too frumpy on her small frame. And this is part of the issue of me trying to figure out how to get it onto her body and not be pulling at the fabric to make it fray more. Anyway, I just decided to pull everything off, which unfortunately did mess up my tissue paper shirt a little bit, but I just left it alone overnight and came back the next morning to try again. So I still liked the shape of my jacket front, but this time I am going to fray check all the edges by using some more tissue paper. I want to add as little bulk as possible, so I feel like this is the best way to do it. If I was just going to add glue straight onto the edges to fray check it, really every time I've tried to do that, it's just pulled more of the edge of the fabric off. So I've decided to add an entire panel of tissue paper to the back of my fabric, which honestly is going to make the fabric more stiff and a little bit harder to fit to her body, but I can pull at it more because I'm not worrying about the edges fraying. So I glued that down, I spread out the glue as best as I could, and then I copied my original pattern for the front of her jacket. I turned it over so I can make sure that I'm putting this on a section of the fabric that is 100% completely glued down to the tissue paper, and I'm going to trace out my pattern pieces. This worked so well. I am so glad I took this extra step because not one part of this piece frayed. So you can see how frayed it was on my previous piece. Oh, and this also gave me the opportunity to make smaller pockets. The pockets were just a little bit too overwhelming for her suit. I had also glued the black fabric down to tissue paper as well, so I wasn't worried about it fraying either. I could then go through the process one more time of attaching these pieces to the front of her body, and as you can see, I'm having to push a bit harder to counteract the dried glue and the tissue paper, but there is no fraying. The pocket looks closer to the correct size, and I'm just overall much happier with the results. I added both sides to the front of the doll with hot glue. This allowed me to push even harder and make sure things took hold faster. Once it was done, I feel like I still kept intact her small frame. The back of the jacket isn't the best, but she is going to be in a chair most of the time, so no one will see it. It was the most important that she looked good from the front. So I am happy with it. I'm moving on. I'm glad I ripped it off. But I'm also glad that the second try worked out. To finish off the jacket, I'm going to add the collar, which is made from some more of the glued tissue paper fabric, so I didn't have to hem any of the sides. I can now add her jacket buttons, which I do think the jacket is closing on the wrong side. I didn't even think about that when I was adding the jacket pieces, but at this point, I'm ready to move forward and not worry about a detail that minor. I did find some flat back pearls that are made for nail art, and these are going to be perfect for her large pearl earrings. And these are just going to be glued straight to her ears. So now she's looking pretty good. She's got her buttons and her earrings, but she does have some necklaces. Beverly from Walker's Way Weeds sent me some options. Very kind. She's a patron, and I had talked about worrying about how I was going to make this necklace. She found some stuff that she had that she wasn't going to use and sent it to me for this purpose. I think this small ball chain is going to be just perfect for Juno's pearl necklace. She has 2 loops of this pearl necklace. So I had to find 2 pieces that I thought would be big enough to loop and hang down her dress for 2 strands. I'm using some airbrush paint, not with my airbrush, but I figured the airbrush paint that I had was a higher quality than the acrylic craft paint that I had and would hopefully stick onto the metal a little bit better than just regular craft paint. So I painted those, let them dry in the shape of a necklace, and then I could put them up to Juno. I do think they're going to work well. I think they're in scale, so I'm really excited to add them on. I figured out where it needed to drape to and added some glue just underneath her first button. I'm going to let that dry first so that the necklace is held tight against her chest, and then I'm going to add glue to the top edges, which are just going to be pushed underneath her collar. This is going to make it look like she has a complete necklace, but we know it's just two U shapes. Now we can move on to one of the most defining parts of making a doll. Really, the hairdo can make or break a character. And you might be wondering, Aira, why are you painting Juno's scalp black? She has blonde hair, but if you look closely to the reference, she has very dark roots. I do like to paint the hairline first on my dolls. I feel like if I miss any gaps with the hair that I put on later, that it will kind of help hide that. So when I was going to paint her scalp, I decided to go with black to give the look of darker roots. So I do like how it came out in the end. I do think it ended up working, but that's why it looks a little weird at first. So now I'm going to be using some blonde viscose to add her hair. This is the way I start most wiggings, where I add the back of the hair first, whatever length it needs to be. Obviously Juno's hair is pretty short. And then I will move on to the sideburns. I think this covers most of the ground of getting the hairdo started. Most people have the back of the hair and sideburns, even if they're bald on top. A lot of times dolls have those things, unless you're Uncle Fester. I was pretty intimidated by her hair actually, because she has a lot of loose curls and her hair is pretty bouncy, I guess I would say. There's a lot of air inside of her hairdo, and I was going to have to recreate that in miniature, where most of the time I like to glue the hair down as much as I can so that it doesn't go out of place. So I was very carefully adding watered down glue to individual pieces of hair and laying down curls one at a time on each side. I did this first for her bangs, so she has on either side just a little hint of curls. Again, these are really soft curls, so they're not even anything that I could curl ahead of time and add to her head. It just had to be laid down one at a time. Honestly, it's still pretty flat to her head, but I think it gives you the idea of her hairstyle, and you can still see the dark roots coming through the blonde hair. The final step, as always, is to get rid of all of the wispies, so I like to use this keyboard vacuum. I put it down on my desk with it on, and then after everything has dried completely, I can cut off any of the wispies that are just off to the side, and they will immediately get sucked into the vacuum and be off of my desk. So now Juno is done. She is ready to go into her office, and I cannot wait. So here she is, the lady of the hour, the owner of the office, Juno, our caseworker. She is ready for work. She's got lots of paperwork to do. She's got football players to organize. But I am so happy she's here. She can get everything in order for me. Oh, and I had to add one more thing. She wasn't going to be quite ready until she had her cigarette. But here is Juno in her office with her desk and her football players. Next up, we will be working on the lights. Thank goodness, it is dark in here. And with my joke I made earlier about her hanging out with the smoking man, I just had to let him visit for a bit. So that's all I have for you in today's video. I know there were a few people that really wanted me to make it look like Juno was smoking. I did look into some of the devices, and a lot of them used water vapor, and I just don't know how that would work in a space with a lot of paper construction. So for now, I'm just going to leave her smokeless, but if I find something else that might work a little bit better, I will look into that in the future. As I mentioned, our final video over Juno's office is going to be the lighting. I have everything I need to get started on that project. I have moved the project over to my desk, and I am ready to get started as soon as I get this video edited and up on my channel. And Mr. Technology will be helping me quite a bit. There's going to be a lot of soldering. But I am excited because this is going to start highlighting those exterior spaces outside of the window. Up until now, they're really dark, and so it doesn't give you the full feel of Juno's office. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you're subscribed if you want to see more, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. I removed your collars, and you're still being the noisiest thing in the room. No. No! I took your collars because you were being too noisy. Do you promise to be still? Come here, come here, come here, come here. Oh no, it's always a fight with you. Okay. You already have yours. All right. We're good dogs. We have our collars back. Good girl. Good girl.